Ready to strengthen your reading comprehension? Take a listen.
Welcome to The Explainer. Let's just dive right in and enter the legal emergency room. Because today, we are looking at exactly how the justice system stops immediate harm before a full trial even starts. I mean, imagine this. A client calls you in an absolute panic. A competitor is literally about to leak their most valuable trade secret. Or a developer is showing up with bulldozers right now to tear down a historic building. You know you can't wait months or years for a trial. You need a legal tourniquet, and you need it today. Both of these mechanisms are designed to stop bad things from happening. But knowing the precise difference between these two tools is absolutely crucial when time is running out. Notice the exact phrasing here: temporary restraining order versus injunction. Now, they might sound completely interchangeable on your favorite TV legal drama, but in a real courtroom, confusing the two could literally cost you your entire case. So we're going to break down their likenesses, their differences, and exactly when to deploy each one. Here is our roadmap for today. We'll start with preventing immediate harm, look at how they are alike, cover the TRO as a quick fix, explore injunctions as a long-term solution, and wrap up with procedures and appeals. Let's get moving. Section 1. Preventing immediate legal harm. Let's start with the baseline concepts that power these emergency legal tools and establish why they even exist in the first place. Okay, so the absolute bedrock concept here is understanding this term, equitable remedy. The standard default in our legal system is that if someone wrongs you, they write you a check to make it right? Money damages are the standard legal remedy. But what happens when money just won't fix the problem? You can't unleak a trade secret, and you certainly can't unbulldoze a historic landmark. When standard monetary damages are completely inadequate, a judge can step in with an equitable remedy to physically stop the harm from occurring. Both TROs and injunctions fall into this incredibly powerful category. And the Supreme Court has made this crystal clear in landmark cases like Amoco Production Company versus Village of Gamble. To get either of these remedies, you must conclusively prove this irreparable injury. You can't just stroll into court and say, hey, I really don't want them to do this. No way. You have to prove with specific facts that if the court doesn't intervene right this second, you will suffer a harm that no amount of money could ever fix. Section 2. How they are alike. Before we tear them apart and look at the differences, let's look at their shared DNA. At their core, both the TRO and the injunction exist to essentially hit the pause button on reality. Their shared mission is simple: preserve the status quo. They aren't designed to punish anyone or permanently decide who wins the lawsuit right out of the gate. They simply freeze the situation in place, preventing any further harm while the court takes the necessary time to figure the whole shebang out. If you can show that irreparable injury is imminent and legal remedies are inadequate, both of these tools are right there at your disposal. Section 3. The TRO, a quick fix. But when the threat is immediate and happening right now, you need that legal tourniquet, the temporary restraining order. 14. This is the magic number to remember. A TRO is an extraordinary, short-term emergency measure strictly limited to just 14 days of duration. You might be wondering, why so short? Well, because our legal system highly values due process, the right for everyone to be heard in court. A TRO severely restricts someone's freedom, so judges are only willing to grant that kind of extreme power for a very brief, incredibly tight window of time to address an absolute, undeniable emergency. Now, what happens if your 14 days are up, but the emergency hasn't quite settled? You can actually fight for a 14-day extension for good cause, or if the restrained party happens to consent to it. However, a TRO's life strictly ceases once a motion for a preliminary injunction is finally decided by the court. It's fundamentally designed to be a bridge, right? A quick fix to keep your client alive until the court can hold a much more comprehensive hearing. And this brings us to one of the most, frankly, drastic powers in the entire legal system. Crucially, a TRO can be issued ex parte. That's a Latin term meaning from one party. It means you can literally go to a judge, present your evidence of immediate and irreparable harm, and get an order without ever even notifying the adverse party. This stands in stark contrast to an injunction, but there's a catch. You can only do this ex parte if your attorney certifies the efforts made to give notice or explains exactly why notice shouldn't be required, like if giving notice would prompt the other party to immediately destroy the exact evidence you're trying to protect. Section 4. Injunctions, the long-term solution. So a TRO buys you a maximum of 28 days if you're lucky. But what happens on day 29 when that legal tourniquet comes off? Thinking about this timeline of escalating legal protection, the TRO handles day 1 through day 14. After that, the preliminary injunction takes over the heavy lifting. A preliminary injunction requires notice and a full hearing, but once granted, it remains active throughout the entire pending litigation, which could easily take months or even years. Finally, when the lawsuit concludes with a final judgment, the court can issue a permanent injunction, securing the peace indefinitely. Unlike a short-lived TRO, an injunction represents a long-term commitment by the court, a standard guided by Supreme Court precedents like Hutton versus Meyer. It carries a much broader scope and a far more enduring binding effect on everyone involved. It's not just a specific emergency measure anymore. It requires much more evidence and a formal hearing to acquire. But the payoff is a vastly more stable and enduring protection. Section 5, Procedures, Rules, and Appeals. Now let's explore the strict, shared statutory rulebook governing both of these equitable remedies. You can't just ask nicely, you gotta follow the federal rules. Under Federal Rule of Civil Procedure 65, you must follow these specific steps to the letter. Rule 65B demands you explicitly state the reasons for issuance and detail the exact irreparable harm. But Step 3 is where things get very real. You must provide security. Usually this means a monetary bond. You quite literally have to put your money where your mouth is. This bond covers potential damages for the restrained party just in case it turns out the court wrongfully issued the order. These bonds can sometimes be massive, which is the system's way of balancing the scales and making sure these powerful tools aren't used frivolously just to bankrupt a competitor. The stakes get even higher when we look at the aftermath of a judge's decision. If you go in for a TRO hearing and the judge denies it or grants it against you, well, you generally have absolutely no right to appeal it. It's simply too short-term for an appellate court to bother with. However, an injunction decision, because of its long-term enduring impact, is fully appealable to a higher court under Title 28 of the U.S. Code, Section 129(2). This makes the preliminary injunction hearing a major high-stakes battleground in any lawsuit. Take a mental screenshot of this grand summary right here. This is your clear, side-by-side cheat sheet. When you need a short-term fix to an absolute emergency, potentially without even warning the other side, you want the limited scope of a TRO. But when you need broad, enduring protection that lasts the entire duration of a lawsuit, and you are prepared for a full hearing that is subject to appeal, you are aiming for an injunction. As we wrap up this explainer, you really have to ask yourself and your legal team, which tool will actually secure your survival before the trial even begins? Because now you know that stopping a disaster isn't just about yelling stop. It's about choosing the exact right procedural weapon. Will you seek the rapid strike of an ex parte TRO, or will you build the long-term fortress of a preliminary injunction? The survival of your case might just depend on making the right choice. Thanks for joining me on this explainer. Keep learning, and I will see you next time.